how did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figure most journalists would not disclose their sources.
If Sean Combs watches this, what do you think he's going to feel?
Like, wow, this is amazing. I think he's going to say this is the best documentary I've seen in a long time. My favorite villain? I kind of like Diddy.
How did you get that footage of Diddy? Most journalists, of course, wouldn't disclose their sources. And if Sean Combs himself were to watch this, what do you think he'd feel? Honestly? Like he's watching the best documentary he's seen in a long time. The man is, in a strange way, compelling. A favorite villain, you might say. There were never any back-channel negotiations. No carefully arranged phone calls. Just a number, a direct message, and a simple, "Yo, Diddy, what up?" That's it. And on another note entirely, he told me to take me shopping. I looked at him like, what did you just say? Meanwhile, the awards kept moving. And the winner is Eminem. The Eminem Show. And no, he didn't just spell the word rapper and forget the beat. Yep, he did not. Now look, you've been working with Puff for 30 years. You were around big before he passed. So you were close. And in the documentary, there were insinuations, carefully placed ones, that Diddy possibly had something to do with both Tupac and Biggie. But you have to consider who's telling the story. When you put people close to a situation in front of a camera, you can shape a narrative. You can skew the story in almost any direction you choose. Then one morning I wake up, check the computer, and it says Nelly. I'm like, what did he say? And then your first baby mama Melissa, then your fiancé. People would think it's unethical, especially if you yourself have faced accusations, to be the one blowing the whistle on others facing similar allegations. But 50 doesn't quit. He posted the Netflix numbers. #1 in 36 countries, climbing in 11 others. And then he went a step further, posting an image, an edited drawing someone made of Jay-Z, putting it right out there for the world to see. 50 Cent's documentary series didn't just arrive on streaming platforms. It landed. It dominated rankings and caught even industry insiders off guard. Many people pressed play expecting another celebrity controversy, only to find something more carefully constructed, less like entertainment and more like a genuine examination. Almost immediately, discussion began circulating about a possible second season, one rumored to be even more revealing and far-reaching. Some of those discussions have pointed toward figures like Jay-Z, potentially revisiting stories and relationships many believed had long faded from public memory. If those rumors prove accurate, the next chapter may not just continue the conversation, it could fundamentally expand it. Speculation has also touched on several other influential names, figures whose connections through power, competition, or unresolved histories remain subjects of ongoing fascination. And that continued silence around the project? It's starting to feel increasingly significant. I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to blow up like this. But 50 has been the biggest champion of this thing from day one. The original conversation between the two of us happened right in the wake of Cassie filing her lawsuit. That's when we first sat down and really talked about it. There were already a lot of rumors in the industry, a lot of quiet talk about certain behaviors. But when Cassie's lawsuit dropped, and you actually got underneath the hood and saw the level of detail she brought forward, that was a lot to process. Both 50 and I were genuinely interested in the nuance of tackling a story like this. Understanding where victimhood begins and ends. Where someone crosses into being a perpetrator. Recognizing cycles of violence and recurring patterns of behavior. The story was deeply complex, and no one was treating it that way. Everyone was just chasing the most salacious headline with zero context. We wanted to put real care into telling it properly. Now, they called it a hit piece early on, but that was before they'd actually watched it. The moment people saw it, the reaction shifted completely, and it became #1. And as for the hit piece label, that came directly from Diddy's team. What else were they going to say? And to those who call 50 petty, he accepts it. Wears it comfortably. The social media antics, the trolling, that's just become part of who he is on those platforms. When people said choosing ABC's morning show was a petty move, he pushed back. It's the biggest morning show there is. And yes, he was aware it would air in prison. That was part of the point. One question that keeps coming up is this: where are the A-listers? Where are the people in Diddy's orbit who have stayed completely silent? Not a single word against the allegations, not a single public statement. With Harvey Weinstein, people came forward almost immediately. Why is everyone so reluctant to say anything about Diddy? Part of it comes down to hip-hop culture. There's a code, don't snitch, mind your business. If 50 wasn't saying what he's saying, there would be nothing being said at all. The silence would suggest the culture itself condones these behaviors. As anticipation for a potential second season continued to build, actor and comedian Marlon Wayans stepped into the conversation in a way no one quite expected. During an interview, he urged audiences to approach the documentary series with caution, pointing to the well-known history between 50 Cent and Diddy and raising questions about how personal rivalries can distort public narratives. The comments drew immediate attention, touching on issues of motivation, perspective, and accountability. 50 Cent didn't take long to respond. In his trademark fashion, he turned to social media, memes, sharp commentary, pointed jokes, pushing back against the criticism in a very public way. What started as a single interview comment quickly became a days-long exchange, keeping both men firmly in the spotlight and adding yet another layer to an already layered story. The family group chat? Oh, it was entertaining. Damon had thoughts. Why did you pick the biggest one? He's been hit 9 times and survived. Stick to beefing with Soulja Boy, people we can actually beat. And just like that, a step back was taken. Because at the end of the day, all that happened was someone asked a question and an opinion was given. That opinion was simple: brothers shouldn't be quarreling publicly like this. And then, somehow, that turned into a public quarrel. The irony wasn't lost. So the name stopped being said. If someone asked for change for $1, you'd get your 50 cents some other way. To be abundantly clear, this was never about defending Diddy. It was about being dragged into something because someone asked a question and an opinion was offered. Nobody is wrong for having an opinion. Period. But watch what happens when that opinion gets clipped, edited, and repackaged. That's exactly the point being made. Don't be sheep. Use your brain, your freedom of thought, your freedom of speech. And don't ever let anyone bully you into silence. What makes this exchange genuinely fascinating isn't just the celebrity status of those involved, it's the timing. This disagreement surfaced precisely when conversations about the documentary were at their most intense. A single interview comment became days of reactions, memes, and relentless online back and forth. As the exchange continued, Marlon Wayans repeatedly clarified that his remarks weren't a defense of Diddy or an attack on 50. His focus, he said, was on fairness, motivation, and the way powerful stories get presented to the public. But despite those clarifications, the comments had already taken on a life of their own. For 50 Cent and many observers, the remarks touched something deeper, tensions that were already simmering around the documentary. And through it all, one thing became increasingly clear: Marlon Wayans was no longer watching from the sidelines. He had become part of the story itself. Now, the back and forth between those two, I don't quite understand it. Marlon's entitled to his opinion just like anyone else. But when you know two people have a beef and you have a platform, why would you wade into it unless you want to become part of that conflict? Marlon comes from a family that built a legacy in comedy and film, true pillars of the culture. So when he uses that voice to suggest 50 is doing something wrong, people take notice. But here's the thing: nobody gets to tell someone else what to do with their life or their time. This is between 50 and Puff. And if 50 is putting things out there, that's their business. What really crossed a line, though, was the AI-generated content. Putting out a fabricated clip against 50, that's a whole different level. And it doesn't stop there. There are cut-and-paste images circulating of people holding photos they never held, suggesting things that never happened. That kind of manipulation is damaging, and the fact that there's little legal recourse for it is genuinely troubling. That was low. Putting 50 in a fabricated image with Puff, knowing full well it was AI-generated, that was real low. But since 50's trolling and the response is to troll back, just know that energy stays on the table. And as for Diddy being in jail, it doesn't bring back the people who are gone. Not Biggie. Not those lost under his watch, and possibly by his making. One journalist suggested Suge Knight was solely responsible for setting Big up. But the question worth asking is this: was Suge Knight working in coordination with Puff to keep Big out of California? To block Big from going to London? Because there's an account of Puff telling Kirk Burrows on that Thursday, "Yo, Big ain't going nowhere. You can go by yourself, but Big ain't going nowhere." When you look at things closely, facts have a way of changing how everything feels. The next name that keeps appearing in online discussions is Jay-Z. For many observers, that feels less like a surprise and more like a natural progression. If public focus were to shift beyond Diddy, Jay-Z would likely be among the first figures to draw serious attention, particularly given 50 Cent's growing influence in shaping this conversation. Their histories span decades in the music industry, marked by moments of collaboration, competition, mutual respect, and a tension that has never entirely disappeared. Meanwhile, ongoing discussions surrounding the Sean Combs reckoning continue to fuel theories across social media. There's been no confirmation of any future focus involving Jay-Z, but the combination of persistent speculation, public curiosity, and studied silence has many people wondering whether another chapter could eventually take shape. Nothing has been officially announced, but the timing alone is enough to keep the questions alive. Were Diddy and Jay-Z really friends? Were they close? They were close enough that when Diddy came on stage, patted him on his backside, and then made a public declaration that nobody could call him Sean but Jay-Z, that wasn't two casual acquaintances. That was a statement. And matching aesthetic preferences, similar social circles, the way they used to greet each other about their respective companions, that's a certain kind of closeness that speaks for itself. Adding fuel to the speculation, 50 Cent has continued making moves on social media that many fans read as deliberate signals. One Instagram post featuring Jay-Z generated an immediate wave of reactions, with followers debating whether it carried a deeper message. Comment sections filled quickly with predictions about a possible Jay-Z-focused chapter. Rather than dismissing the theories, 50 appeared to encourage them, liking comments, engaging with speculation, letting the conversation breathe and grow. At the center of all this interest is Jay-Z's decades-long influence in the music business, his extensive network of ventures, and his well-documented connections throughout entertainment, including his long-standing association with Diddy. None of this confirms a future project, but the continued absence of any public response has done nothing to quiet the rumors. If anything, the silence has amplified them, with many online observers treating the possibility not as speculation, but as something they fully expect to eventually materialize. Now, some people raise the question of ethics, whether it's appropriate for a rapper to be calling out another rapper, particularly when many in the industry have their own histories of problematic behavior. Domestic situations. Things that have been swept under the rug. People argue that if you've faced accusations yourself, you lose the moral standing to point fingers at others. But 50 isn't stopping. The Netflix numbers speak for themselves. And that Jay-Z image, the one he claimed he wouldn't post? He posted it. Said please stop sending him stuff like this. And then posted it anyway. The interesting part wasn't even the image. It was the comment section. 50 was in there, liking posts that were saying, "Do the documentary on Jay-Z next." He was liking them. Right there on screen, encouraging the conversation, amplifying the expectation, letting the audience connect the dots for themselves. Another name that surfaces regularly in Season 2 speculation is Rick Ross. And unlike some of the more abstract theories, this one is grounded in documented history. The rivalry between Rick Ross and 50 Cent is one of hip-hop's most recognizable and enduring conflicts, stretching back to the late 2000s, fueled by lyrical references, public criticism, and direct disses that kept tension alive for years. While the intensity has shifted over time, that history doesn't just disappear. It sits in the background, waiting for the right moment to resurface, and moments like these have a way of bringing old conflicts back into focus. Elsewhere, a situation in Canada recently caught attention for all the wrong reasons. The hope is that the brother involved made it home safely and comes away with a clearer sense of what to do and what not to do when you're out in the world. That little move he made right before things went sideways? That didn't reflect him. That reflected his camp. He might want to reconsider who's around him. Number 4 on the list of names generating discussion is Janice Combs, a figure who rarely seeks the spotlight but could become highly significant if a future season chooses to examine the foundations of Diddy's early life. Following the early loss of Diddy's father, she played a central role in raising her son, working to provide stability and opportunity during his formative years. Accounts of that upbringing have long highlighted her determination and sacrifice. More recently, she has publicly challenged how certain media projects have portrayed those early years, arguing that some depictions failed to accurately capture the discipline and care that defined her household. Her comments have reopened debate, particularly as different people familiar with that period have offered conflicting recollections. If future projects choose to dig deeper into Diddy's background, her perspective could become one of the most scrutinized and consequential pieces of that conversation. Some believe he was victimized long before the industry ever got to him, that the seeds were planted much earlier, in the environment he grew up in what he may have witnessed inside his own home. Questions have been raised about the nature of that household, the people who came through, the things a young child in that environment might have seen or experienced. His mother has spoken openly about her work during those years, pouring drinks at after-hour spots, collecting tips. And Diddy himself, in his own words, described a sigh of relief upon learning his father was connected to the streets. A sigh of relief. That's a revealing thing to say, that discovering your father was a gangster or a hustler was somehow a comfort. That says something about what he was absorbing and aspiring to from a very young age. And the films playing in the house, the people coming and going, the Mac, Superfly, hustlers and players through the door late at night. When that's the world a young boy is growing up in, with no male authority figure present, it shapes what cool looks like. It shapes what power looks like. The environment builds the perception. Another name quietly entering the conversation around a possible second season is Ray J. He's not typically seen as a major industry power broker, but his long history of headline-generating moments and high-profile appearances has kept him connected to broader cultural discussions. Part of the interest links back to a well-known backstage incident years ago between Ray J and Fabulous at a Las Vegas event, a story 50 Cent has revisited multiple times through interviews and social media, often with pointed humor about how the situation played out and how quickly it faded from public memory. More recently, 50 has continued referencing Ray J by reacting to his interviews and appearances, keeping his name circulating in online discussions. Whether those references carry deeper documentary significance or simply reflect 50's habit of engaging with whatever's trending is open to interpretation. Either way, the name keeps coming up. The documentary itself revealed some details that left people genuinely lost for words. Waking up with company that wasn't there when you went to sleep. Waking up and Diddy was in the bed. And then walking away from the situation physically different, physically affected, and somehow continuing to party like nothing had happened. These accounts carry a weight that's difficult to sit with. Another figure attracting attention in the Season 2 conversation is Stevie J. His connection to the discussion isn't rooted in a personal feud, it's rooted in questions about loyalty. As a longtime Bad Boy associate and accomplished producer with close ties to Diddy spanning many years, Stevie J became a focal point after publicly expressing strong, unwavering support for him amid the controversy. The comments spread quickly, drawing reactions not just because of what was said, but because of the conviction behind it. It felt like more than friendship. It felt like a firm, deliberate stance taken under intense public pressure. Predictably, 50 Cent turned it into content, social media posts, jokes, viral commentary that kept the moment alive and amplified the discussion. As the documentary conversation has grown more serious, Stevie J's visible loyalty has brought him further into the public eye and sparked broader debates about what it means to stand by someone when the stakes are this high and the scrutiny is this intense. Rounding out the names most frequently mentioned in Season 2 speculation is Floyd Mayweather, a figure whose history with 50 Cent practically writes its own chapter. What was once a highly visible friendship, built on mutual admiration, shared success, and public camaraderie, slowly unraveled into one of the most widely followed falling outs in recent memory. Business disagreements, Financial disputes, personal differences, and competing ambitions created friction that eventually spilled into public view, interviews, social media posts, and pointed statements from both sides that questioned each other's loyalty, judgment, and character. What makes this particular conflict stand out from typical music industry rivalries is its scope. It extended well beyond rap, into wealth, influence, branding, and the question of personal legacy. That's why Mayweather's name keeps surfacing whenever the documentary speculation heats up. The story isn't simply about two men who fell out. It's about what happens when two enormously successful personalities find themselves on opposite sides of a relationship that neither seems quite ready to let go of. That complexity alone makes it one of the more compelling possibilities in any future examination. The response to all of it? Staying in the lane, minding the business, letting the watches speak. 30 days away, 30 watches packed. And if the haters need more proof, there's always the one that costs $18 million. And as for 50 Cent, the challenge stands. Read one full page of a Harry Potter book, and $750,000 goes to the charity of your choosing. The book is right there. So where does all of this leave things? Is 50 Cent genuinely preparing to pull back another curtain with a second season? Or are these developments simply early signals of something much larger still forming behind the scenes? With so many names surfacing in speculation and so many questions left unanswered, some fans believe what we've seen so far represents only a fraction of what may eventually come to light. For now, the conversation continues, driven by theories, reactions, and a public that clearly isn't ready to move on. If you've been following along, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think comes next? And if you found this breakdown worth your time, subscribe and stay connected. As this story continues to evolve, you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, stay informed, stay observant, and stay tuned.